Every year, it seems like there's something that changes for us non residents who are trying to go over the counter elk hunting. Some units change, tags get removed, some units get closed, different caps get put on, the systems change, but it always seems like something is going on. It seems like, it feels like to me, non residents are sometimes fighting a losing battle for over the counter elk hunting. This year, both Idaho and Colorado are proposing changes that could signal the end of over the counter elk hunting as we know it. But this podcast is not meant to be about doom and gloom. This podcast is about looking at the options that we have available and trying to make the best out of the situation that we have and doing our part. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the state of elk hunting today, what the changes are that have been proposed, what options are out there for over the counter elk hunting, as well as some ideas and thoughts and considerations for what your general elk application strategy should be. And you should have one if you're hunting elk out west. So we're going to talk all about that and more. But if this is your first time listening to the podcast, I am your host, Andrew Lakosovic. I started hunting back in 2018. My first hunts ever was actually out in Montana on a general big game combo, which is both elk and mule deer. And it was in western Montana. It really was more of a mule deer hunt than an elk hunt, but I had no idea what I was doing back then. And outside of seeing some bucks, definitely no tags were filled on that hunt. But I appreciate that you're here. I try to share my experiences, what I've learned, usually through hard won lessons, to help you be a better hunter, understand more about Western hunting, and learn from my experiences and mistakes so that you don't have to. This is episode 30 of the podcast, and I'm really happy that you're here. So, I want to start by sharing a story of an over the counter archery elk hunt that I went on back in 2022. This is my second ever elk hunt. It was in the state of Utah. Now, Utah does not have the greatest reputation as an over the counter elk hunting state. But my friends and I wanted to go out elk hunting. And we, back in 2022, we got the archery tag. This was my second time going on an elk hunt. The first time was actually also in Utah. That was on a general rifle hunt. This time we wanted to go with our bows. Wanted to chase bulls in the rut. I wanted to experience that bugle. I wanted to be able to call and hunt elk the way that you see it on all of the TV shows and the YouTube videos. And that is exactly the experience that I got. I will never forget the first bugle I heard, and this was like undoubtedly an elk and not another hunter. But I remember that experience. We showed up, got into our camp, and we were spike camping. So we had our main base camp, and we would go out from there. And I remember at the end of the day, I ripped a long bugle just before we were calling it. Wanted to do one last time. And a couple of miles away, I just hear this angry, guttural bugle yelling at me, followed by just branches shaking, everything like moving around. And I was like, holy crap, am I calling in a bull? And I had my buddy Peter with me, and it's pretty dense where we were. And you just hear absolute aggression. And we started getting set up like, maybe this is it. Maybe something's going to come in. So on the caller, Peter's getting ready to go with his bow. And I rip out another bugle. And immediately it gets met with the bugle from this other bull. But where he is sounds different. We're sort of going up a ridge. Not really. But there is a ridge a mile, 2 miles maybe, ahead of us. And the best that I could understand is this bull, and what I think to this day is this bull had some cows. And he thought that I was a competing bull trying to steal his cows away, but he had his harem. So he was running down the ridge with them, and boy, were they running. After going back and forth with a couple of bugles, it was clear that he wasn't coming in, that he was doing some form of defensive strategy. So we ended up hiking back to camp, but the whole way I was bugling back at him. And man, they move. He there's nothing but deadfall there. And he just, he went 4 miles in the time that it takes me to move one, at least four. Like, there's no way. But I will never forget the feeling, the giant smile on my face from getting in a bugling match with a bull. And that's something that I hope I get to experience more times. And I hope that if that's one of your goals, that you get the opportunity to experience it too. Now, that hunt, we did actually have a few more opportunities at some bulls. I made 2 critical mistakes in both of those, but this podcast is not about my archery elk hunting mishaps. This is all about the changes to over the counter elk hunting in general. And I share that story because I'm never going to forget that moment. And I didn't even get to harvest anything. If you want to hunt elk over the counter, archery, rifle, whatever, you've really got to start paying attention. You got to start getting active because the environment and the ecosystem is changing, and I've seen it change a lot in just the 6 short years that I've been hunting. I'm hoping that I'll be able to share some of those changes, talk about what's coming up this year and in the future, and help you figure out what you're going to be able to do to continue elk hunting going forward. So I mentioned Idaho and Colorado both are making some big changes this year. Now, Idaho's over-the-counter system has been sort of a laughingstock the last few years. Personally, I've never participated in it. Idaho is pretty far away from me, especially now. If you are watching this on Spotify video or YouTube, I have yet a different studio in the background. You can see I'm pointing over my left shoulder. I'm not sure which side it looks like for you. That is the very first whitetail deer that I ever shot back in New Jersey. And then over my right shoulder that I'm pointing to now is my Wyoming pronghorn. And then the Euro over here on my right is Lopside from Carrie's place in Central Texas. My wife and I are now settled in our Tennessee house. This setup, this studio may change as I figure things out, but for now, this is the way it is. So back to Idaho. I've never participated in their draw. They've always been far from me, and they're even further now that I'm in Tennessee. But the last 3 years, I feel like the jokes made about their draw system, it just sounds awful. I've never participated in it. If you have participated in it, send me a message and let me know what your thoughts are, because I have just heard horror stories. The news this year is that Idaho is taking those over-the-counter hunts and making them a draw. But let's be honest, the Idaho over-the-counter hunts are basically a draw. If you, like me, have never participated in the over-the-counter system, essentially what you do is you log in at like midnight, I'm pretty sure, and you get assigned a random number. And that, regardless of when you show up, that's your number. So you could be the first one in line and you could be number 4,000 for whatever reason. Because of that, it's basically a draw anyway. So I suspect that this change has been a long time coming. I don't know that people are going to be happy about it, but at least this way, you should be able to just put in the draw and not have to wake up at a ridiculous hour and spend hours in line hoping that your unit is available. You'll just be able to pick the units that you want, I assume anyway, and wait for the drawing results to come out like you do with the other controlled hunts that you have in Idaho. If I'm not mistaken, that is legitimately the end of Idaho's over-the-counter hunts. Maybe there will be some return tags and options there, but from an over-the-counter, going to the gas station, buying it, those days are gone in Idaho, unfortunately. And this brings us to Colorado. Colorado is making some very big changes. Now, as of right now, as of this recording, when this podcast is going to come out, these changes are proposed changes. They are not set in stone yet. There is going to be an evaluation period. But, and I think this is a big but, when things like this get proposed, if it's this year or it's next year or the following, chances are this is eventually going to happen. Well, what they're proposing is eliminating all archery, over-the-counter, non-resident elk hunting. Every unit would be turned into a draw. If you've ever thought about going archery elk hunting over the counter, you want to experience what that's like, this is probably the year to do it, because even if it doesn't get enacted next year, it's probably going to in the future. I mean, very rarely when these things get mentioned as proposals are we able to stop it in perpetuity. But if they do accept the changes this year, then 2025 it goes into effect and there will be no over-the-counter archery elk hunting. Oddly enough, they are leaving the rifle hunt. Now I'm going to speculate here. This isn't in the official language. This isn't anything like that. I think, as a non-resident who has never hunted in Colorado, just keep that in mind. I think that Colorado is trying to balance the desires of residents who are annoyed with the unlimited tags that are offered for non-residents. They're tired of seeing people in the woods chasing elk. I mean, that's that. On the other side, they don't want to lose all of those non-resident dollars. Colorado currently offers unlimited over-the-counter hunts. That's a lot of money on the table. And the reason I think that this is at least partially a money grab is because let's look at the facts. Across the country, are there more rifle hunters or bow hunters? There's more rifle hunters. And Colorado's still going to offer the rifle hunt. Rifle hunts tend to have higher success as well. So they're eliminating archery, which has very low success odds, but keeping rifle hunting. To me, this sounds like their idea of a middle ground where they get to maximize the amount of money coming into the state from non-residents by keeping the rifle hunt open, but appeasing residents in eliminating the over-the-counter unlimited archery elk hunts, which is like the dream hunt, right? Like you want to chase bugling bulls, that's when you do it. And Colorado is the state to do that today. They will always likely have the largest elk herd, although there is a chance that will change too. But that's kind of what my thought process is. When I first saw this, I was a little bit more on the this is a money grab side of things, but I realized that there's probably a balancing act and that they're trying to balance the two out. I don't know that it's the right solution. I guess it depends on when we have to ask what question, what is Colorado trying to solve for in this change? It's not to impact elk herds, because if they wanted to improve elk numbers, they'd restrict the over-the-counter rifle hunting. To me, it seems like they're trying to appease residents while maximizing the revenue that they're able to bring in. That's how I see it. I'm just speculating. I may be completely wrong. What do I know? I'm some idiot on the other side of the internet. That's kind of the way I see it, if I'm being honest. That being said, the writing is on the wall. And I think many non-residents like myself are going to see this and evaluate, their hunt strategy. I think that regardless of whether or not this proposal gets accepted, you're going to see more hunters in the elk woods in Colorado this year, because people are going to see the writing is on the wall. That whether it's this year, the next year, the following, people are going to know that over-the-counter archery elk hunting is going to go away soon in Colorado. Maybe even rifle hunting. They might turn all of it into a draw for all we know. And it's an important thing to keep in mind, something that Randy Newberg says often. Wild game belongs to the residents of those states. They're held in trust by the state for residents. And non-resident hunters have the privilege of being able to hunt these animals in states that we don't live in. So, something to keep in mind. The reason that the state wants us is because our tags cost like 10, 15 times more than residents do. And residents don't like us because we're supposedly blowing up all of their spots, even though changes like this kind of incentivize people to just move to that state, which is realistically the problem. So many people moving to Colorado, even doing stuff like this isn't going to make that much of a difference. But the writing is on the wall, and I think Colorado is going to be busy this year. Even if it's accepted, it doesn't go in effect until 2025. So what's going to be busy this year? The other thing that Colorado has going for it in a bad way is wolves. Last year, the ballot initiative was passed that is basically saying, hey, even though there are wolves naturally migrating into Colorado, we're going to take wolves and put them in our state. If Idaho is an example of what happens when wolves get introduced, Colorado's elk herds are going to suffer in the short term, especially the first few years. As the wolf population grows, the elk are going to be caught by surprise. They're not as conditioned or used to the pressure that's going to come from wolves. And that means that we will likely see a sharp decrease in the elk population over the next couple of years, which is undoubtedly going to impact whatever over-the-counter hunting still exists and the draw hunts. Colorado, over the next 5 years, is going to be very interesting to watch from the outside because there's a lot going on with the politics of how they are doing their ballot initiatives to impact hunting regulations very much outside of the North American model of wildlife conservation, the wolves being introduced. I hope that Colorado is able to maintain its status as the premier elk state. I just don't know. So, is this the end of over-the-counter elk hunting? I mean, it's hard to say. When I started hunting 6 years ago, everyone back then was saying that over-the-counter elk hunting is dead. Hasn't played out that way. However, the opportunities have gone down in that time. And I suspect that that downward trend is going to continue, at least for the short term. I think that we may have opportunities to try and fix things. I'm going to talk about those more later, but things have been on that downward trend for a while. With that being said, what opportunities are there for over-the-counter elk hunting? So you still have Colorado's rifle hunts. They still have a mixture of draw and over-the-counter elk hunts, rifle hunts. They're likely to change over the next few years. Again, going back to the politics and the introduction of wolves, populations are likely to go down, and Colorado has made it's kind of starting to look like Washington State, where politics are taking over, which is unfortunate. Utah is a state that has over-the-counter hunting. I talked about the story of my archery elk hunt over-the-counter in Utah. They have any legal weapon, which is basically your archery or your rifle hunt. And they have an archery only, which is when you can chase them during the rut. They have spike and any bull hunts. Any bull are opportunity hunts. I've always done the any bull hunts because I didn't want to mistake a bull for being a spike. In reality, they have a branch antler or a tine coming off. But they do also have these spike only units, which are interesting opportunities that I considered for a while. Basically, they are the trophy units for the most part. You can only hunt spikes though. So if you wanted a cool opportunity to go to a unit where you could potentially see some world-class trophy bulls, that's a good opportunity for you. But I will say this. I've done the archery hunt and I've done the any legal weapon hunt. I've done both. And I don't know that I would recommend it. It was great learning experiences. I had fun, but the amount of people that were there, the pressure, it was a lot. There were not a lot of animals. I saw on my 5 days of hunting during that general rifle hunt, I saw 2 elk, one actually nice branch antlered bull, and a cow. On the archery hunt, I did see more. So I got in that bugling match. I never did see that bull. I saw 2 lone bulls after that. And then we found one herd that had maybe 15 cows in it. And I'm pretty sure there were 2 young bulls. They weren't mature bulls. I know they were bulls. I just don't think they were mature bulls. I went after them regardless because I wanted to get my first elk. I hadn't gotten one at that point. But man, it was tough hunting. But that's over-the-counter hunting in general. So would I recommend it? Probably not. But if you're looking at this and you want to see what the opportunities are, or you're just trying to get your feet wet and learn, honestly, the tag's not that expensive. And there are many opportunities over the counter for you in Utah. So I don't know if I'll go back again, but it is something to consider. You have 2 more states that offer over the counter hunting for elk. Washington State has both Rocky Mountain and Roosevelt elk, actually. Opportunities for over the counter with both species of elk. On the Rocky Mountain side, they're very regulated. And what I mean by that is most of the good hunting is in the quality elk units. You would want to put in for a draw. Draw odds are very low. But if you wanted to chase elk, you want to go for spikes or cows, there are over-the-counter options for you on the Rocky Mountain front. On the Roosevelts, actually, there are regulations. The over-the-counter hunting is supposed to be better. The Roosevelts are isolated to the western portion of the state. Some units do have a 3-point rule, so something to keep in mind if you are going to give Washington a shot and you're going after Rosies, you will want to pay attention to the regulations for the specific unit you're going to. The best hunting is still in quality elk unit with a draw, but there are opportunities for you to hunt over-the-counter Rosies and Rocky Mountains. But if it were me, and I've never gone purely because of how far away Washington is, if it were me and I was going out there, I'd go for Rosies all day. I mean, where else do you get in the lower 48? There's only, a couple states that you can hunt Rosies. Realistically, there's only 2. And we're about to talk about the next one. Oregon. Oregon has both Roosevelt and Rocky Mountain elk, just like Washington. Oregon is more of an opportunity managed state than a quality managed state. So there are more units and more opportunities for you on an over-the-counter hunt than you would have in, say, Washington State. Whether you want to go with Oregon, Washington, Utah, or the rifle in Colorado. Again, this year you'll have archery, but that may not be the case in the future, depending on when you come across this podcast. Over-the-counter hunting is over-the-counter hunting. There's going to be public hunting pressure. It's likely going to be rough terrain, and you're going to have to get creative. But if that's what you want to do, there are options for you. Depending on where you live, these may be easier for you than not. For me, living in Tennessee, I've never considered Washington and Oregon because of the logistics. But that may not be something that you're concerned about. Ultimately, you're going to have to evaluate what you're looking to do and make a decision and a plan based on that. Which brings me to the next piece of this podcast. What should you be doing, right? So looking at this, taking a step back, there's changes that are coming to over-the-counter elk hunting. There's changes that are always going to happen. We're never going to be in a time where everything is picture perfect and nothing's changing. While we still have over-the-counter elk hunting for now, opportunities have diminished over the last 6 years, and they're going to keep changing. So what should you be thinking about? What should you be doing going forward? I think first and foremost, if you want to be a hunter, an ethical hunter today, you need to be an advocate for the resources that you are pursuing. You have to join. I think the days of considering yourself a good hunter and being part of the system where all you had to do was buy a tag, I think those are long gone. If you're an elk hunter, you should be a member of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. You should be a BHA member, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Just those 2 organizations alone are going to use your dollars, and they are going to try and do habitat restoration work. They're going to try and build up elk populations. They're also going to try and fix access issues. That's mostly where the BHA focuses, but RMEF does that as well. They're going to try and create more opportunities. Like Randy Newberg says, we need to be focusing on creating a bigger pie than trying to save the little sliver of the pie we have, because it's just going to keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We have to focus on being advocates. We've got to be vocal during these comment periods. Like right now, you have an opportunity to make comment to Colorado's Fish and Wildlife. You can tell them how you feel about these proposed changes. You can talk about the dollars that they're going to miss out on because you're going to go to the state. Not only do they miss out on your tag dollars by not going on this archery hunt that you could do, But they're also going to they're going to miss out on the revenue that you bring in for buying food, if you stay in a hotel, all of those extra expenses. They're missing out on all of it, not just the tag dollars. But you have to be an advocate. You need to send emails and make phone calls and be an active participant in this legislative decision-making process. That is the reality of the situation in 2024. As it relates specifically to hunting and what you should be thinking about and what you should be doing as part of your hunt plan, we're going to take the legislation and advocacy aside. Elk hunting is my favorite Western hunt. There's nothing like it. They are huge, and I don't know. They're just awesome. I love it. I'm not great at explaining it any other way than they're just freaking awesome. I love elk. They're so much fun to hunt in any way that I can hunt them. I'm buying a muzzleloader to enhance the opportunities that I have. But that being said, I like other hunts too. I went on a mule deer hunt last year. I love pronghorn hunting. And I tend to focus on the drawn hunts because I've done quite a few over-the-counter hunts. And man, do I hate hunting pressure. If I'm going to do an over-the-counter hunt, I'm going to do my damnedest to find a way of getting away from the other hunters. So for me, my hunt strategy is more diverse. I'm looking at multi-species, multi-state applications, and I'm applying for and building points for everything so that when I want to hunt something, I have opportunities, ideally. But let's just say you want to focus on hunting bulls every year, specifically bulls. You still have opportunities with over-the-counter and drawn hunts. If you are willing to do a multi-state strategy, depending on where you live, there are options for you. If we look at purely over-the-counter, you do still have Colorado rifle. You've got Utah archery or rifle. Washington and Oregon State have options for both archery and rifle as well. So if you're willing to balance those out while applying for drawn hunts in, say, Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, Arizona. Now, Wyoming and Arizona will take you several years to draw. If all you want to do is hunt bulls, you shouldn't just do over the counter. First of all, you should absolutely be building points somewhere. And the good states for you to do that, good opportunity states for you to do that, Montana is actually decently easy to draw. You should be able to draw every couple of years for now. Colorado has hunts that you can draw for bulls with 0 and 1 point. I'm sure that that's going to change too now with people potentially losing the over-the-counter archery hunts. I'm sure more people are going to be going to those drawn hunts where you get them with low points. But those opportunities exist. And then you have Wyoming and Arizona, where at least in Arizona, if you're willing to do a late rifle hunt only, if you're looking to do archery, it's going to be a while. But if you're willing to do late rifle, muzzleloader, Arizona, you can draw a tag. I say short term, but it's realistically like 5 to 7 years as of right now. In Wyoming, you always have a chance. I've seen people that draw it with 1 point. I've seen people draw it with 0 points and 2. Chances are it'll take you 5 years as of right now to draw, but you could be one of the lucky ones. I was a lucky one for Arizona. You could be a lucky one for Wyoming. So those applications should be in your strategy, period, if you only want to hunt bulls. If you simply want to hunt elk, spikes and antlerless opportunities will really help you out because now you have a bigger pool to choose from, more states and more hunt opportunities, but you have to pay attention. Some states will use your bull points on a cow hunt. So make sure you understand where you're applying and what those regulations are before you do, because you don't want to build up points for 3 or 4 years and be like, you know what? I want to go hunt a cow this year. I'm going to go do that. And then you realize you blew all of your points on it. There are ways around that for some states. If you put that as a second choice or other options, you also have returned tags that you could pick up. I know Idaho is big for that. Montana is big for that. So there are other opportunities for you to do those. If you simply want to hunt elk and you're willing and you don't care whether it's a bull or a cow, those opportunities are there and you'll have a much easier time and more options. You'll also be able to get a lot of repetitions. And of course, this is all assuming that you can only go on one hunt a year, because honestly, going on multiple elk hunts every year is going to be tough if you only want to hunt bulls. You can do it. You're just going to have to be creative and willing to work really hard. You're also not going to be able to hunt trophy bulls every year unless you can pay for those hunts on private land, in which case, good for you. More power to you. And the last thing I'll say is, not that I think I have the best strategy, but if you're willing to broaden your horizons and look beyond just elk, if you're interested in hunting multiple species in multiple states, you can generally forego over-the-counter hunting together, period. Because if you have a good strategy and you can only go on one hunt a year like myself, maybe two, you can get a good plan together. If you are willing to budget appropriately so you can afford to do multiple applications, build points in multiple states, it is possible, but it's all about your desires, figuring out what it is that you actually want, putting together a good plan, and then executing on that plan. Hunting it's not easy. And it's not meant to be. But if you're overwhelmed, if you are looking at getting into Western hunting and you are not sure where to start, where to begin, you feel like it's too late, it's not. Send me a message on Instagram if that's you. You can get me at Endurhunt, ENDURHUNT, and shoot me a message. And, I'm no expert, but I've been in the Western hunting game for 6 years now. And I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you've got. I'd be happy to try and help you out and get you hunting out west, because, I started this podcast because I wanted to help the people that were behind me. People like myself that were starting as an adult, not really sure where to start, what to do. We're feeling a bit overwhelmed with everything. And if that's you, please reach out, message me. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Hunting's changed a lot in the 6 years, but I don't think that it's doom and gloom. I don't think that we should be looking at this as, this is the end of Western hunting for non-residents. I don't think that's the case. It gets harder. It does. But if you are willing to broaden your horizons, look at the opportunities, drive or fly a little bit, the opportunities are out there and you can do it. If it's something that you want to do, you can do it. It's just a question of how much do you want it. All right. That is it for this episode. Slightly different than previous episodes that I've done, but I think this is an important topic to talk about. And I hope that you took away from this that although over-the-counter hunting is changing, that it's not the end of Western hunting, that there are opportunities out there, especially if you're willing to be open to multiple states, going into the draw hunts and looking beyond over-the-counter. The opportunities are there. You just have to be willing to go for them. If you like this episode and you learned something, please share it with someone who you think would get value out of it. I don't market or do anything like that. So any ratings that you provide or sharing the podcast goes a long way at helping it reach people. And as always, I like to say that at the end of these podcasts, that time is our most valuable asset. I don't take it lightly that you chose to spend it with me. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening. And I'll see y'all next time.